So, what ever happened to the incredible nuclear-powered submarine model prop, the SEAVIEW from Irwin Allen's classic television show Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea? Let's find out. Movies,
Music and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here talking about movies, music, and monsters. Guys, 100,000 subscribers in less than 6 months. Unbelievable. And once again, I've got to thank all of you for that, because without you, there would be no this. Thank you. There is literally no way to even begin discussing classic adventure sci-fi shows in the 1960s without acknowledging the fact that pretty much one man was the undisputed king of network television from 1964 to 1970. The master of disaster himself, Mr. Irwin Allen. It all began with Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea from 1964 through 68, continuing on with Lost in Space from 65 to 68, The Time Tunnel from 1966 to 1967, and ending up with Land of the Giants from 1968 to 1970. Only 6 short years, but 4 unbelievable shows containing hundreds of hours of exciting stories, memorable characters, and more importantly, concepts that would set the groundwork for writers and filmmakers for years to come. I mean, think about it. Without Lost in Space, would we have gotten Star Wars? Without the Time Tunnel, would we have gotten Quantum Leap? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. One thing I always loved about the Irwin Allen shows as a kid, and I'm pretty sure this is pretty much the same for all of you guys, was all the super cool technology that we got to see week after week, show after show. And I really can't explain why, but ever since I was a kid, I was always really curious and maybe a little infatuated with whatever happened to all this stuff when the shows were done. I mean, where did it all go? I do a lot of videos on this topic, what happened to TV and Hollywood movie props, only because I think it's so interesting, something that really sparked my imagination as a kid on that little tiny TV screen might actually be somewhere owned by somebody, a real thing that I could literally maybe reach out and touch. And hopefully you guys find that interesting too. So, let's dive in. It's Irwin Allen's first incredible television series that we're going to be focusing on today. Of course, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, or more specifically, the props from it, which ran on the ABC network from 1964 through 1968.
When I made the series originally, I never realized it would last long, maybe a couple of years. And now I've got generation after generation watching Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, particularly in the first year. I thought it was by far the best of the series, and it was in black and white. And then in the second year, we went into color. And then the third and fourth year, it became really a little ridiculous.
And yes, of course, this particular series was based on Irwin Allen's original motion picture, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, in 1961. And I definitely plan on doing some deep dive videos into both of those in the near future. But today, I'm going to just focus primarily on the super cool SEAVIEW prop from the show and the movie. A little historical information about the origins of the SEAVIEW. American nuclear-powered submarines were really a major topic in the years prior to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea even being filmed. The USS Nautilus, which was commissioned in 1954, was the very first nuclear-powered ship ever created and was the first ship to ever reach the North Pole. In 1959, the USS George Washington, which was America's first nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, was the very first ship to make submerged launches of Polaris missiles. So it certainly makes sense that by the time the early 1960s rolled around, that Irwin Allen's imagination would literally dive into a story about a nuclear-powered submarine. And thus, the SEAVIEW, network television's first nuclear-powered submarine, was born. The original concept for the design of the SEAVIEW was more or less a group effort. Herman Blumenthal, Bill Creeber, Herb Creek, L.B. Abbott, and even Irwin Allen himself all gave their creative inputs for the final decision of the sub's design. In fact, there were actually 3 different SEAVIEW models created for the production of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. There was a 4-foot model, an 8-foot model, and then an enormous 17-foot model built by the Herb Creek's model shop at 20th Century Fox in 1961 at the cost of a whopping $200,000, which, believe me, was a whole ton of cash to spend on props in the early 1960s. Now, I do have to state, however, that during my research I found some additional information about other SEAVIEW models. I'm not saying they didn't exist. All I'm saying is today I'm going to focus only on the 4-foot, 8-foot, and 17-foot models. Special effects genius L.B. Abbott was primarily responsible for creating all these special effects for Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which were partially filmed at the backlot of Fox Studios. To create the appearance of enormous waves crashing against the ship, the frame rate of the camera was upped from 24 frames per second to 136 frames per second, giving it a bit of a slow motion effect and adding a sense of weight and scale to the shots. As far as toys was concerned, lucky for all of us that Aurora Model Kits produced their very own version of the SEAVIEW back in 1965. Okay, but what happened to all the different SEAVIEW model props? Well, the 4-foot model of the SEAVIEW didn't really have the best of luck after the show ended. No joke. Apparently, the ship was heavily damaged during a, let's just say, physical altercation between writer Harlan Ellison and an ABC network executive named Adrian Samish. I don't really know the details, but for God's sakes, if you're going to have an argument with a network executive, leave the props out of it. This 4-foot model did eventually receive a full restoration and is now in an undisclosed private collection. But at least we know it still exists, and that is super cool. Now, the 8-foot model of the SEAVIEW was unfortunately and literally beheaded, so the rest of the model could be used in a television miniseries, also by Irwin Allen, called The Return of Captain Nemo in 1978. Irwin Allen, see what I mean? Cheap. Don't bother making a new prop, just grab one of the old ones and cut the head off it. Quite a shame it was never reunited with the rest of its body, but you know what they say, that's showbiz. I found no current information at all about the whereabouts of the 8-foot SEAVIEW today, but if you know, let me know. Now, the 17-foot large-scale, huge Hero SEAVIEW submarine was used in both the movie and the television series, and was filmed both on the surface of the water and underneath inside 20th Century Fox's massive water tanks. Kinda cool, these were the exact same water tanks used in the production of both Tora 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 in 1970 and the Poseidon Adventure in 1972. And check this out. Here's a super cool photograph of David Hedison himself in the 20th Century Fox water tank with all three of the SEAVIEW props in one shot. How cool is that? This amazing photograph was taken by photographer Gene Trindle for the February 1965 issue of TV Guide. Now, as for the fate of the largest SEAVIEW model, the 17-foot one, it spent literally years sitting inside the garage of master model maker Dave Merriman. And he's the very talented guy who built several of the miniatures for the film Hunt for Red October in 1990. Then from there, it spent a whole bunch of time hanging above the bar at the now closed Beverly Hills Planet Hollywood restaurant from 1993 to 2002. This enormous prop eventually sold in a Profiles in History Hollywood auction in December of 2003 for a whopping $47,500 and ended up on display at the Museum of Science Fiction located in Seattle, Washington. But that, my friends, is not quite the end of the story for this 17-foot SEAVIEW model because... And grab your credit card, folks. It's for sale again. And here it is. This incredible piece of science fiction television history is, even as we speak, being auctioned off by Julien'S Auctions, along with a whole ton of other really cool Irwin Allen props and memorabilia. And no, this is not a paid endorsement. Julien'S Auctions simply reached out to me because they knew that a lot of this stuff that's currently being auctioned off would be of not only great interest to me, but to all of you guys as well. Mostly built from fiberglass, this huge original hero prop features plexiglass cab windows, bay doors designed to fit the flying sub, rudders, missile hatches, antennas, periscopes. It's really quite amazing to see that this prop still exists in this incredible condition literally 60 years later. I mean, remember the hours you spent in front of that television with your eyes literally glued to this exact prop while enjoying the adventures of the SEAVIEW back in the 1960s. And get this, they're not only auctioning off the 17-foot SEAVIEW, but they're also selling one of the original 4-foot Jupiter 2s from Lost in Space, including the original Gemini 12 launch tower from the original pilot episode. Absolutely freaking amazing. Either way, if you're interested in actually bidding on these incredible pieces of history, or if you just want to sit back, relax, and see how much this stuff goes for, check out Julien'S Auctions. Link in the description. And by the way, if you happen to be the wonderful person who ends up buying any of this really cool stuff and then you eventually find out you just don't have room for it at your house, I can make room for it at mine. The incredible SEAVIEW from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was not only America's first nuclear-powered submarine to grace the screens of network television, but was the first in a long line of classic Irwin Allen props that not only fascinated us as kids, but kept us tuning in week after week to see what fantastic piece of imaginative technology they'd come up with next. The Jupiter 2, the amazing time tunnel, the spindrift, the chariot, the giant props, the robot, and one of my all-time favorite Irwin Allen props, the flying sub. But that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive into what happened to the SEAVIEW, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. If anybody has any questions, as always, you can drop them down in the comments and I will try my best to answer them for you. And please, feel free to stop back anytime as we continue our conversation on movies, music, and monsters.
Movies, music, and monsters.